Hi everyone, welcome to the licensing hearing for 14 Clifford Street. I understand that Councillor Cuthbertson has been elected chair for this hearing. I'll hand over to Councillor Cuthbertson now.
Despite the fact that the membership has changed somewhat, I'm still remaining as chair. So, yes, I'm still here. Yeah. So welcome to the applicant and the representative to this meeting to decide this licensing application. I'm Councillor Ian Cuthbertson. Hopefully it says the same on the other side. Yes, it does. Good. I have on my right Councillor Kilbane, and on my left Councillor Rose. Sorry. And you've already been in touch with Mrs. Cook, the licensing officer, and our legal advisor, Jodie Ingram, and clerk, Angela Bealby. So I'm assuming that the introductions were of members, but we know who you both are. So unless you want to say anything more about yourselves, the sentence will be in order. No? Should have one that says MIC under.
Yeah, so that would now be working, would it?
Yeah.
You're right.
And you'll see a red button on the side of your set. You won't see it because it's at the back corner, but everybody else will. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we start by having introduced ourselves to check for any declarations of interest in the matter before us, and that's really applicable to elected members. So any declarations of interest? No. Okay, none from me either. So there are none from the members here. Okay, at the end of this meeting, we as a group of members will need to decide what the outcome is to be from the council's point of view as the licensing authority. And that means that we will wish to exclude the press and public from that. And at that point, that will be a point at which you will have made your representations, and effectively the game's over for you at the moment until the result is announced. Because that could take, it has been known to take several hours, we prefer, on the grounds of just not wasting people's time, to ask representatives and applicants to come back later if they wish to. But what we will do is guarantee to get the outcome notified to them in writing. And that will be a maximum of 5 days, I think, Angela. Yeah, okay. But hopefully we'll get it out before then. Okay, so we need to decide about excluding the press and public for the deliberations section of this, which is right at the end of the meeting after the applicant has summed up. Okay. So what I'm saying is we'll agree now to do that. At least I hope we'll agree now to do that. Yes. And then when it comes to that point of the meeting, we will ask you to leave, and we will consider, and we will make a decision known to the officers, and that will be notified to you.
And we'll suspend the webcast.
Oh yes, the webcast will be suspended. Okay, so we'll start then by, can we just agree to exclude the press and public at the appropriate time? Good, that's done. Thank you. You don't have a vote on that one, I'm afraid. Sorry. Okay, So we move on to approve and sign the minutes of the last licensing hearing, but I think that was done at an earlier stage in this matter, so we won't be approving any minutes or signing them because that's already been done. Okay, so we are going to determine your application now for a premises license in respect of 14 Clifford Street. And can I just check that both of you have received the agenda and the agenda supplement for today's hearing? Good, okay, fine. So, it's probably included with your documents, actually. It's on page 71. Yeah. It's been stapled in with everything else. You. Right, thank you. Sorry, is that? Okay. So as long as we've all got the documents. So that's just a supplementary bit, and it's got some. Yeah, it's got some additional information in there relating to the cumulative impact zone and how we will take that into account in making the decision. Okay, so that's page 81 to 83. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Crawshaw, you should have pages 81 to 83, yeah, which
This is already got. Right, yes, I already have cumulative impact assessment document.
Oh.
So, yes, I think I've got the right.
Okay.
If it looks as if
I'm sorry.
If it looks as if we're talking at cross purposes and I haven't got anything, could you let me know? If it looks as if I'm missing something, let me know. Thank you.
I'm also saying I've got the hearing independent myself, so I'll be doubling that in fact. And it would be helpful if that might go on. So just to say it again, I've got a hearing impairment myself, and I'll be watching out for any difficulties. Okay, right. So the routine is that the licensing manager will present their report about the application, and I'll then invite each party and the committee members to ask the licensing officer any questions they've got about the report. And then at that point, Mr. Moore, you then have 15 minutes to present your application. It may not take 15 minutes, of course, but it's up to 15 minutes. And then I'll invite Mr. Crawshaw and the committee members to ask any questions to you. And then Mr. Crawshaw will present his representation, again up to 15 minutes, and Mr. Moore and the committee members will have the opportunity to ask questions about his representation. Lastly, the final stage is that Mr. Crawshaw has 5 minutes to sum up, should he wish to do so, and then Mr. Moore has 5 minutes to sum up. And in both of these cases, and after them, committee members can then ask any clarifying questions should they not have thought of them already by that point. Okay, so if everybody's ready, we'll move into the licensing manager's report. Mrs. Cook.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the application for the grant of a premise licence for 14 Clifford Street, York. The licensable activities applied for are films, live music and recorded music from 10 AM until 1 AM every day. Late night refreshment from 11 PM until 1 AM every day. The supply of alcohol on and off the premises from 10 AM until 1:30 AM every day, with the opening hours of the premises from 10 AM until 1:30 every day. The applicant has agreed to remove indoor sports, boxing and wrestling and performance of dance from their application. A copy of the application and the plan can be found at Annex 1 of the report. I've also on the table supplied larger copies of the plan, so it's clearer for everybody to be able to see. The premises is described in the application as a basement lounge stroke social bar predominantly used by the holiday guests that have booked into the upper floor apartments. The basement will be open to non-patrons prior to booking in advance. Live lounge style entertainment will be provided on certain evenings with a pool and darts. The lounge will be available from when guests check in to I'm assuming that's the apartments upstairs. An overview of the circumstances in which entertainment activities are not licensable can be found at Annex 2. As part of the application, the operating schedule submitted by the applicant showing how the licensing objectives would be met can be found at paragraphs 10 to 14 on pages 22 and 23 of the report. I apologise that there is an error in the report. This premises is located within the Community of Impact Assessment area, and Section 9 of the Statement of Licensing Policy was published as an agenda supplement. And I've also placed large plans on the table of the Community of Impact Assessment area. I can confirm that the consultation process was carried out correctly. There are no representations before you today from responsible authorities. North Yorkshire Police has mediated with the applicant, who has agreed to amend the operating schedule. The agreed conditions can be found at Annex 3 on pages 53 and 54 of the report. Public Protection has also mediated with the applicant, who has agreed to amend the operating schedule. The agreed amendments and the agreed conditions can be found at Annex 4 on page 55 of the report. There have been 2 relevant representations from other persons. The representatives' details can be found at Annex 5. Their representations are predominantly based on the grounds of prevention of public nuisance and prevention of crime and disorder. Their representations can be found at Annex 6. A map showing the general area around the premises can be found at Annex 7. And again, that's in front of you as a larger plan to make it clearer. The committee has the following options when making your decision. Option 1, grant the licence in the terms applied for. Option 2, grant the licence with modified additional conditions imposed by the licensing committee. Option 3, grant the licence to exclude any of the licensable activities to which the application relates and modify, add conditions accordingly. Option 4, refuse the person specified as the premises supervisor. Or option 5, reject the application. And there's also a further agenda supplement that has been published with additional information provided by the applicant. And that is again another plan of the premises. That's a brief overview of the report, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask the applicant, then the representative, and then members if they've got any questions about the manager's report. No.
I'm fine with it.
Okay. Mr. Coulter?
Yeah, I'm fine with it too.
Okay. Members, any questions?
Only one question, which I should have asked in advance of it, but noting the very low bar for rejection under the cumulative impact assessment because of the way in which the cumulative impact area works. I just want to know where the nearest residents are on the map. I didn't ask that question in advance. I apologise because I know next door have made a representation. Do you happen to know what the nearest actual residence is on the Annex 7 map by any chance?
I know that there are residential properties on King's Stave.
Yeah.
I believe that what on the plan what's shown as number 1 and number 2 on the corner of King's Stave and Low Friargate, I believe they're residential properties. And of course, on the opposite side of Clifford Street, and what used to be, the fire station's a little bit further down, but on the opposite side of Clifford Street, some of those buildings were developed and turned into flats.
So potentially 15, 17, 19. There's residences that.
There's potential. I aren't quite sure
That's okay.
what numbers there are, but I do know on Clifford Street, some of those properties has been turned into flats.
Thank you. Apologies for not asking that in advance of the meeting.
Okay. So, and there's some questions from me, Alan. So, Mr. Moore, it's over to you to present your case, and we look forward to hearing from you. Quickly, 15 minutes, and at that point, we'll then Mr. Court or members of the committee can ask you any questions for them. Thank you.
Predominantly the applicant for the licence basement bar is predominantly going to be used by the guests of the 11 flats above. However, we have two other holiday lets in the city centre, and this is why we wanted to have the availability for these other premises what I have to also book if they wanted to use the facilities in this building. One of them sleeps between 16 and 20 people, which is in the centre, and the others in the process of getting done, and that's in Stonegate, which will sleep between 10 and 12 people. But in total, I think the maximum capacity is around 70 to 80 people in the bar. If the apartments alone at Clifford Street are full, and with every bed in there full, we have 72 people. So we'll be nearly at the capacity with the guests what are actually in that building. And the reason why I'm bringing that point up is as and when people are leaving or coming from these premises, with noise and for residents nearby, is predominantly majority of the guests won't actually be leaving the building and coming out into the street. There'll be, and there's an internal staircase for the guests what are staying there, which will come out of the bar internally and go to where the lift shaft is in the middle of this. What's this one? Yeah. So to the stairs to the right hand side of that lift shaft are the ones what will lead to the bar lounge area. So most of the guests will come up that way, but I was concerned that I'm not saying all 72 people will use the bar, but if it isn't enough, and if only 50% use it, then we have the other two premises what we can try and get them to use it. If other guests are coming to the premises, they're going to be using this door, which is right on the right hand side, which is this entrance. Where my finger is. That entrance is in the passageway what leads between my building and Plonker's Wine Bar. The idea is that other guests or anybody who pre-books won't have access to get into the lift shaft area when they're leaving the bar. So when they leave, they have to leave on the same exit as they've come in, not going upstairs into they can't get into the holiday flats, but they're in there's a lift and then there's stairs going all the way around the lift. So I didn't want people leaving and going into that area unless they're actually guests. So the guests will get a code to put into the door to come down and a code to get back up. But as in the guests what are staying in the building, third party guests or pre-booked guests will come in and out of this other door, which is on the left of the building. I have been an experienced licence operator for over 20 years, and I've never had never had any issues with the licensing department on any of my premises. Recently, within the last 12 months, I have sat in front of Council Clifford on the Lounge 46 premises, what I did in Wormgate, the coffee wine bar. That's been operating now for 6 months. Police has never been called once. We've had no nuisance, no fighting, no carrying on outside the premises. Touch wood. And that does have a licence till I think 1 AM. We have no issues there. And previous to that, I've had numerous licensed premises in the city. So I'm not new to the game. I have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge of what happens in premises and how to control them and make sure they're managed in the correct manner. Just looking through some of the points, what people may not like or don't agree with is, yes, we're trying to offer alcohol, and as it says in the report, for like a hotel or bed and breakfast where they can get alcohol on site rather than leave. Not everybody who comes into the city centre wants to go on a pub crawl. And if they've got the facilities in-house, like these 11 apartments, then it will save them going outside if they want to stay internally. The other thing what I want to make clear is the entrance door for the non-guests of that building will not be open with a doorman stood outside for general public walking by to try and think, oh yeah, we'll pop in there for a beer or whatever. It isn't going to be operated like that. It's only going to be, that door will be closed unless you four have pre-booked in to come, and then the member of staff internally will come and open the door and let you guys in. Then the door will be shut again. So there'll be no walking past trade. We're not trying to advertise it where we need to be on the main street with big flashing lights, come this way. It'll literally be for the guests of that premises or pre-booked parties where they'll be shown in and out, and not looking for passing trade and big signs outside to try and get them to come in. On this corridor here, this was with the guy who come from the licensing, environmental protection unit. So in this section here, if I point the finger there, what his concern was, the noise escaping out of here, getting out towards the neighbouring building, which is the one of the objectors, the theatre. It's about around 18 metres from the bar area to this exit. So from where the bar and any music would be in this area. And this is the door here. So this passage here is about around 18 metres. What was suggested and recommended by the guy from the council was if we install a soundproof door after the toilet area. So again, if you're looking at the toilet area here, we're going to install a door here, which is a soundproof door. The reason why we're going to do it there and not, we already have an internal door from the bar to the passageway where the toilets are. We're going to do a soundproof door after the toilets. So when the door's opening internally from the bar for people to go to the toilets, to stop the music travelling down that corridor, we're going to install a soundproof door halfway down that passage. So around 10 metres from the bar door to the door after the toilets, which is where the cellar cold storeroom starts, to keep that noise in that corridor rather than it going another 10 metres to the external door. On soundproofing between the basement bar and the flats above, and this is why I did send this other drawing in, which I think Leslie's kindly blown up. This is tracing paper over the top of the basement bar. So above the basement bar is actually no residents or guests. It's actually an architect shop, office, and an estate agent's. So the nearest tenants in my block, obviously, we need to keep the sound down with the soundproof what's already installed. So you've got the basement bar on the ground in the basement. Then you've got ground floor, which is the solicitors or the architects and the letting agents, and then you've got the first floor, which is our first lot of guests. So they're 2 floors above where the basement bar, and most of the noise will be in that area and not along Lower Friargate, where we do have a ground floor flat, which is flat 1, which is above what will be the proposed bottle cellar store, which there'll be no noise from there. When we've got the cellar store, you might say, oh, well, there'll be noise coming from there. Just to make you aware that we're not going to serve any draft beer where it's got beer pumps and a cellar cooler, where you store your barrels and you have big cooling units to keep the barrels at a low temperature to come down the tubes to where you're pulling the pints. We're only going to actually serve bottled beers. So even though it's the cellar, it's more for storage rather than beer barrels and condenser and fridge units, which will make more noise. So majority of the noise will be in the bar area, and it'll have two soundproof doors. One's at this side and one's at the other side, which is near the VIP lounge area. And I think that's about all I can shed any more light. What other than that, I did agree with the licence offer on the recommendations what they put forward to me. I agreed with the environmental protection unit on his recommendations of what with this acoustic door situation. And that's about it, I think.
Okay.
I hope I haven't gone over the 15 minutes.
10 minutes.
But not so bad.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Moore. Okay, so having heard the applicant's presentation, can we ask if there are any questions for that? Mr. Crawshaw, as the representative, I'll give you first bite at this cherry, and after that, be members. Have you got your microphone on, please?
My apologies, and I do tend to rather mumble, so do ask me to speak up if it's bad. Right now, where are we? On the application, page 38, which is the actual what Mr. Moore was asking for. Under I, late night refreshment, 38. Got it? So on page 38, Mr. Moore has ticked the box for late night refreshment being served both indoors and outdoors. Where was the outdoors bit, please? It's the top right hand box under section I.
The outdoors is, I believe, in fact, I might not be 100% certain on this, but I believe the outdoors is if you have been in the bar and just say you wanted to go back up to your room with your wife and say, can I take a bottle of champagne? Can I purchase a bottle of champagne or a couple of bottles of beers to take back to the room? That's classed as off sales, not on sales, because you're taking it off the premises as in from the bar area.
Yes.
So not outdoors as a window arch where you can serve passing public, like what we would call an off license or corner shop. It's only for if you want to buy 6 bottles of Budweiser to take back up to your room.
Right,
I believe, I think Leslie might be able to.
Just to clarify, that does relate to an off sale of alcohol. This question is about late night refreshment.
Right.
You've ticked the box for late night refreshment that you want to do both indoors and outdoors.
Right.
So would that mean that if somebody has purchased food in your venue at 11:30, that they could then leave with it and take it home?
Does late night refreshment, is that covering food and alcohol?
No, that's just food and hot drinks.
Right.
Alcohol you have ticked that you want both on and off the premises.
Right, so to clarify, the first one is we're not doing food. So if that's been ticked, that's wrong. The second one is I would only want the off sales if it's they can take it to the room, not for them to take it away from like an off license type thing.
Yeah, you would need the off sale provision because you're not licensing the entire building with your holiday lets included.
Yeah.
If anybody takes alcohol from your licensed area to their room or even takes a bottle of champagne home, you would need the off sale provision.
Right. So that's what.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification on that one. Because I was concerned whether it meant another pavement cafe or something like that.
No.
It's pretty narrow there. Right, that's got that one out of the way, and the same applies to the supply of alcohol. You've dealt with that one as well.
Right.
And that's another of my questions on J. So that's done. And you've already clarified it's actually 11 apartments over 4 floors. Because at one point, and it seems to say four apartments, and I think that it's clarified that's okay as well. The accuracy of the plan left a little bit to be desired, in my view. This is the one that's there. Because, for example, on the top of the plan, as we look at it, it says 7 meters left to right from the fire exit kept closed to a centre point, and then 8 meters to the right of that. And yet the 8 meters looks physically smaller than the 7 meters.
Yeah, looking at that map, I think that it should be the arrow for 7 meters ends where that doorway is along there, because the end to end of the 11.5 meters is that entire room. Is that a correct understanding of what it should say? I agree that the 7 meters is longer than the 8 meters on the diagram. There's a wall halfway, there's a little indent wall and door just before the end of the 7 meter.
Yeah, it's sort of there. That's where you're.
That's my assumption.
Yes.
If the dimensions. Mr. Morris, the dimensions are all marked on the.
I don't know if this drawing is actually to scale,
Right.
as in like an architect's drawing to scale. It's showing you the measurements, but
Right.
admittedly the 7 meters does look longer, but if it's not to scale, it doesn't reflect on if that's 7 and that's 8 meters, because I don't believe it is to scale. But I could, is that just a blown up of this one? Seven. That's a separate room.
We're deliberating about the answers on it, aren't we? I think.
Just on that bit there, that isn't a wall there, but this is a wall here, and this bit here is a separate room.
Yeah.
And then this bit is a separate room.
Hmm.
But I know that one's definitely, this room internal is definitely 4 meters. So it'll be 4 and a 3.
Yes.
And that'll be the 8.
Yeah.
So
So
even though that line's bigger, it isn't.
yeah. So in other words, basically the arrow is put in the wrong place.
Yes.
Basically. So yeah. Okay. Got that. Thank you.
Any questions from members?
Well,
Sorry, I beg your pardon. I thought you.
one more question on page 54, the bookings. How are you going to manage the bookings? Or how is Mr. Moore going to manage your actual bookings? What happens? Do they, if they've got to arrive with 3 hours notice or something?
Yeah.
Have you got some system whereby the people who want to come in from your other premises will let the staff know, or how will it be done?
So the way it would be operated is if you booked apartment 1 in not this, let's say none of these bookings are internal from this
Yeah.
building. When you book, you'll be offered the facilities to use this bar.
Yeah.
So you can click on various buttons where if you wanted chauffeur service, if you wanted extra towels, extra bed, if you want to use this bar, then you need to book. So bookings are taking anything up to 12 months in advance.
Oh, I see. Yes.
So when you're booking, say, 4 lads going to the races at the one what's on Blossom Street, then they could say, well, we would say to them, do you want to use the facilities of this bar? And if you do, you need to pre-book, and this is how much it's going to cost you. And the same as on my other bar, which is the one in Warmgate, if they want to use a 2-for-1 cocktail in that bar, we can ask the guests where they're coming or when they're coming, and if they want to use any of the facilities at either premises. If it's an outside booking, then the same will, I don't know, has it been stipulated that it needs to be a minimum of 3 hours for a booking to come in?
Yes.
Leslie, we do build, is it?
Yeah, page 54, one of the police requirements.
It is one of the agreements with the police, one of the conditions.
Yeah, so I mean, 3 hours for me, if I'm trying to get people walking by, it's not long enough, but I'm not trying to get people
No.
walking by. I'm trying to get these 2 guys what I've booked to come to races and want to go somewhere, what they know it's already going to have our guests in,
Yes.
that they can book and come to that premises. And they'll probably book the room anything from a month to 3 months.
Yeah. Okay.
And the same as operating it internally is if, through the booking system, they'll then email the bar manager and say, Mr. Cutterson and his wife are coming at 3 o'clock on whatever day. So then they will know then to come and let you into the premises.
Yes, okay, fine. That's solved that one, thank you. I mean, the guest entrance as well is a good idea, because I was wondering how you were going to keep them out of the flats. Apart from the fact that that alley is extremely sordid,
Well, hopefully if we can create some traffic in and out that alley, it'll stop people using it for what they shouldn't be using it for.
Yeah.
And I'm installing security lights down that alleyway. So again, as soon as you walk into that alleyway, it's going to light up.
yes,
Well, if you know the area as well as I do, it's pretty dark down that alleyway,
Yes.
and it's often used for something, well, we all know it shouldn't be used
Yes.
for.
it smells. Yeah, thank you. That's my job done.
Is that your questions?
It is.
Caution.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, members, any questions from you?
I mean, I've got
Councillor
a
Rose.
million questions, so I'll chip away at them with everybody else. The first one, just a flurry of questions around guests, firstly. So firstly, there are children who are guests, as called out in the papers. What would they be allowed to access the bar area? Would that potentially mean that they are accessing at the same time as guests that they're not associated with? People from other households, or even in this case, people staying in other buildings. What's the circumstance around children?
We will allow children in, but they have to be accompanied by an adult, and there'll be a time limit of when we just say no children under 18 from, say, 7 o'clock on an evening.
And that's with a specific criteria would be that children at all times in that place would have to be.
I don't. What I'd like to know is I'd like to know if there's a law of when kids can be in there and when they can't be in there. So if I said they have to be out by 7, is that the law of that a child under 16 can't be in there after 7, or is it something what you would recommend?
No, the law says children can be in a licensed premises up to midnight. However, if there's a condition on somebody's license that says children have to be out of the premises by X time, 7, 8, 9, whatever PM it is, that is then the law, because that's a legal condition on a license.
Well,
I've just realised your mic's not on and your mic is sorry.
I'm happy if
Yeah.
it's a condition set by the licensing authority to say kids have to be out at whatever time you think's.
Would your suggestion being that there's a condition that children under 18 are not unattended in the bar and have to be out by 7 PM? Is that what your
I'm
suggestion
happy
would
with
be?
that, yes.
Thank you. Second question about guests is agreeing that, you know, it means the guests can choose to stay in and head straight upstairs afterwards. Obviously, that doesn't apply to guests who might want to go next door after 1:30 when it closes, or guests coming from elsewhere. Particularly, you know, there's a reference in the updated paperwork around pointing people to taxi ranks, etc. But if they're 300 meters away on one gate, they're more likely to walk home. Is there anything that you've got in place, or that you would have in place aside from signage, that would encourage them to not have an impact on the local streets on their way back to their respective buildings?
An impact as in what?
Public nuisance is a low threshold. It's relatively vague, isn't it? But if you've got people potentially who are coming to stay in other premises, who are coming over to use, so one gate isn't within the cumulative impact assessment, area, we're pulling people out of their area into this area by having this option there. They might then spill out into next door to Cuda or wherever it might be nearby. Is there anything you're doing beyond please be polite signage?
Well, just the standard, which in all of my premises, what I've had is please put a sign on any exits saying please leave quietly. We're in a residential area. Anybody what's coming, if they're pre-booked, they'll know whether they've had to get a bus, taxi or walk, and how to get to where they're going back from there, other than if they're going elsewhere in the city centres. But it's most important for me, not just for residents, is if this doesn't work and the noise can't be kept and it's not going to cause any nuisance, the revenue from the flats above is 100 times fold more than the revenue what's going to create from the bar. So if I can't keep them happy by controlling this, it isn't going to work. So I've put a lot of time, money and knowledge into making sure that's going to happen. And if it doesn't, it's not that I don't care about King's Stay or whatever, because I do, but my focus is on making sure flat 1 or 2 can't hear any noise or other than what you will hear in the city centre anyway, as in you're going to hear buses go by, taxis and drunks walking home. But I don't want to add to that, so I'm trying to keep it where as little as possible can have an impact on anybody what's living there, and especially my guests, which is 70 odd people. The other thing that I just want to make sure is, yes, we've applied for all these every day, as you do with a licence, but predominantly this premises will only be used on a Friday and Saturday night. We probably won't even open unless it's a bank holiday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday evenings, or unless there's something on in York what would entitle us to open, because as say the Christmas markets, we're always full when the Christmas markets or the ice things are on. So you can't pick and choose your days like that, but I would say probably 80% of the time it will only operate on a Friday and Saturday.
And I guess to clarify on that point, if the subcommittee feels that it's necessary on those days of the week, would you be open to the idea of a condition that might limit the hours on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, for example, to not be 1 AM if
it's discussed after I've left and Leslie's still in the meeting and it comes to where you say I've put I think 1:30 every night. So if it was a non-bank holiday or non-Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, then I would be willing to lower the say late night refreshment to whatever. If it was a condition on the grant of a license, then I'm happy to work with them rather dig my heels and say, no, I definitely want that just in case. Because there's no point keeping the bar open on a Tuesday night with 3 or 4 staff on if there's 5 people in. It's not liable. But if it's a Saturday night and there's anywhere between, let's just say, half the guests and the full capacity are in, between 50 and 70 people, then yes. But on a Tuesday, Wednesday night, if you look at any restaurant or bar in the city centre, about 90% of them, there's hardly anybody in.
Yeah. My third question on the same topic, if that's all right, before I pass it back to you guys for other questions on similar things, is I've got quite a lot of other questions. Yeah, sorry. This specific one is, what happens with guests if guests in the other premises book 12 months ahead and then people book into that building and they want to use the bar, but it's already been booked? And does that mean that they won't be able to get into the bar? Is there
again, it's on the capacity. So if 20 have booked on 20 from other premises have booked on New Year's Eve on the other premises, and with capacities 70,
yeah.
And when we send the emails out or we're booking, once we'll get to the limit, then if you booked into that apartment block and said, can we use that? We'll say, no, it's full because you haven't booked in time. We're at our capacity. But it depends, like, everybody's not going to stay all night. They're not going to come in at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon and stay till 1 o'clock in the morning. So as long as we have I'm happy to have a condition where we'll have a number counter of how many people's in and how many's leaving. And if somebody else wants to come in and they have pre-booked, but we can always say then you can only come in after a certain time, because between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock, we're full. But from 5 to 7, if you want to book in, you can book in for them hours.
So people staying in the apartment would have the same booking as people staying in the other apartments.
Yeah, they'd have the same.
And they could potentially book for a set number of hours, not book for the whole evening. They would be able to book for set.
They can go on a set number of hours, it's not a problem early. But I think it's hard to say because you don't know how long people are going to stay in. That's the issue. But in my view of it, I think the way it'll operate is 4 couples coming to races. All boys are ready. Girls are doing their hair and makeup. Boys will go downstairs, have a few beers while you get ready, while you finish getting ready. They've done their hair and their makeup. They come have one, and then they're off when they've gone to the race. I'm not saying all women take ages to do their hair and makeup, but that's the idea of where it could be 10 girls, 5 are ready, and they're sat around in not a big lounge area in an apartment. What sleeps 6 or 8 or 10 girls? Then they can go down and wait in the bar area till they go off into the city centre.
I think we're on dangerous ground here.
Got more questions.
Right, okay. Councillor Kilburn.
I'm obviously conscious that we're well over time on questions, so I'm just going to ask a couple of clarifying questions, really. You're saying that the capacity is 72, but you put in for 100 on the licence. Can you explain the discrepancy?
No, the guest capacity of the guests in the apartments is 72. And I think on the recommendation from the fire officer who drew the plans, I think it was up to, I thought it was 80 or 100 or whatever.
It's 100 in the application.
Is it? Well, it must be 100 then. So the guest capacity of that block is 72.
Okay. And just on the issue of late night refreshments, so hot food and drink, are you saying you don't want to supply?
No.
So in terms of your application, box I, where you've ticked for both, we can actually take that as reading not applicable because you don't want to provide hot food or drink. Okay.
Drink, yes, but does hot drink come under that then or not? If they wanted coffee or?
Yes,
Oh, well,
Yeah.
so it needs to stay on then.
yeah. Anything above ambient room temperature is classed as late night refreshment.
Right.
So, yeah.
So that, sorry, it
Oh,
needs to stay on then.
Is that you? Right, okay. Okay, Mr. Moore, just a couple from me. You've got a premises in Stonegate, which is not exactly adjacent to Clifford Street, is it?
No.
What about, have you got another set of premises?
Yeah, I've got some on Blossom Street.
Blossom Street, okay. All right, so both of those would be having a bit of a stroll for a visit to the bar, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Mm.
What I think will happen at, say, for people who've booked at Blossom Street, we may do a package where they will taxi or walk or bus into the city centre, and they'll use that as a destination point to come and start if they're going on a pub crawl or if they're going on brunch, going for brunch somewhere. So the idea is that yes, it's quite a walk from Blossom Street to there, but they're probably going to come into the city centre anyway.
Yeah.
And it's where do we start or where we're going to finish to go back.
Okay, thank you for that. And my other question is about putting bottles into the bottle store.
Yeah.
Are you going to, I'm not sure what the carriage of sound is likely to be at that point.
Yeah.
But it just occurred to me that if it were done at the wrong time, it could be a noticeable nuisance.
I agree 100%. So if you look where the bin store is,
Yeah.
which is near that exit,
On the other side of the corridor.
yeah, that is internally, and this grey box here, just so everybody's aware of that one, is the electric substation for Clifford Street.
Right.
And this bin store here is it's just like, it's about 1 metre 2 wide by 2 metres long. So all the bottles are internally, so they're going to be emptied from a bin behind the bar, taken to that, tipped internally inside a sealed cupboard, which is about 1.2 by 2 metres long. So we're not opening that fire exit door and putting the bottles out where Cuda, Plonkers and Lowther put the bottles, which is in that courtyard behind Streamline Taxis. Ours are going to be emptied internally and only taken out into so the bins, just to make you aware that the bins are actually stored internally, not externally like all the other ones.
Okay, cool. That's questions from me then.
Yeah, one quick question on that. So that's the wall that's adjacent to the theatre then.
There's a passageway.
There's the passageway.
So imagine the passageway is like this. Our entrance is on the right. Our bin store is through that door, and it's internally in there.
Yeah. Have we need to ask my other questions?
Well,
We're only over time for
how many have you got? Can you
representative
keep them
questions.
brief?
I can see how brief I can.
No,
keep
I need you to keep them brief. I think everybody needs you to keep them brief.
There are a number of questions because I think they relate to, for example, the point that you just made around potentially people coming in from outside the cumulative impact area for a pub crawl starting point, which brings people in, and late night refreshments has been covered. The one particular point around the guest capacity, I know it says 100 on here, and you mentioned it could be 100 in the bar. It seems like a tight space for 100. You mentioned 72 a few times. Is the intention for it to be 100, or is the intention?
No, I don't set I don't set the capacity. The fire officer with the exits and how long the travelling distance is to the exits, they're the ones what set the capacity, not me.
Yeah.
So if they said, my honest opinion, there'll never be 100 people in it. But if the fire officer said that's what the capacity could be, then I have to go by that.
Yeah, I guess.
So if you turn up as an enforcement officer and you count 120 people, then I'm obviously breaking my licence conditions. But
From our licence perspective, we can impose a different number on that potentially.
Well, I'm more than happy to have the capacity down to 80 people. If that wants somebody else to make a note of that.
Again, just for us to take that away as part of the considerations of what we feel might bring it under that cumulative impact threshold or similar. The soundproof door you mentioned when you were talking through it, would you be happy for that to be a condition? I don't know if we're even allowed to check with Leslie off later, but
it was Leslie, who was the guy who come out? Can you remember from licensing?
It was Michael Golightly, one of the environmental protection officers that discussed.
So he walked
public
aside with me
nuisance.
and he gave me some recommendations and he said, I don't have a problem, but it would help you if you put that condition in that the soundproof door needs to be installed after the toilets.
Yeah.
And then, because you could do it 3 meters before then, but then when they're going through that, going to the toilets, by the time the door's shut, you're going to get the travel of the noise. So if you do it after the toilets, there's no reason why they will leave that until they're leaving the premises.
Yeah, and I know it depends on whether we're allowed to make it a condition anyway, but putting a soundproof door in between the live and recorded music and that entranceway might.
Yeah, as the plan does form part of the premises licence, the approved plan does form part of the premise licence. This door that Mr. Moore has mentioned isn't actually on the improved plan. So it would maybe be minded for members to put that we will need an amended plan showing where that additional door is going to be located, because it will be on the emergency exit route out of the venue as well. So we would require an amended plan.
I think from what Mr. Moore said earlier, it's probably in that kind of position. So.
I've got that there, the village, so it's there, that's where them 2 lines are.
All right, okay, yeah, fine.
My last question for this section then, but it's we didn't touch on it earlier in the licensing manager questions, but it touches on Leslie as well. Is the application for 10 till 1:30, so 10 AM to 1:30 AM supply of alcohol? You mentioned there aren't guests directly above, but there are businesses operational directly above who, sound still travels through potentially. Can I confirm what the current licensing of this site is for alcohol and for sound currently? Has there been any historically? I know it used to be a restaurant, etc., but did they have any of this licensing?
Previously, this 14 Clifford Street, so the corner, used to be a Pizza Hut. And if I remember correctly, the restaurant was on the ground floor.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure what the basement was used for. I can't remember if you went upstairs or downstairs for customer toilets in there. And then next door was 14A Clifford Street. And that again was Fiesta Mexicana, with the Mexican restaurant on the ground floor and in the basement below. But I think it was offices that were above those premises.
The basement area and what we're talking about within these boundaries, were they ever licensed for alcohol or music?
This particular basement wasn't licensed previously, no. Not when Pizza Hut was above it, it wasn't, no.
Okay, thank you. And obviously during business hours, it's probably not in our control in terms of licensability of music anyway, I guess.
No, not for the hours. Well, not until 11 PM anyway. No, it isn't.
Okay. Thank you for your patience on that one, both Mr. Moore and Mr. Caution. The applicants, Mr. Caution, you've had your questions, we've got our questions. So Mr. Caution, your pace now, please.
Right, press the green button and I hope you can hear me adequately.
Yes.
Mr. Moore, have very largely covered most of my questions. I did wonder whether there's a hotel license or something, 'cause I believe if you have a hotel and you have your own guests, it's less stringent than for public use. And presumably often hotels have an annex somewhere else. So would there be, is this a possibility or not? I mean, that's one question about whether the whole thing could be dealt with by a hotel, which would be less stringent. And I would urge that the CCTV actually is kept working, because there was a case right in Friargate, in Lower Friargate, where a man was found with serious head injuries about 20 years ago on the wee small hours of a weekend, and he never recovered consciousness, and the police were unable to find out whether he'd been hit by a car or been involved in a fight in the yard behind. They went to Plonkers to look at their CCTV and it wasn't working. So it's important that it's kept working. That's that one. And also the use of door staff. I don't know. I noticed the police are not insisting on door staff. And given your assurances of what it's going to be used for, that seems to be a reasonable supposition. So really, I've not got a lot to add to the letter I put in. And so really, if I think if you can take my letter as read, which you probably can, then that's all I have to say, basically.
So if I may just come back on that point, Mr. Cawshaw. Are there any points from your letter which you feel haven't been addressed and which you'd like to talk now?
No. Given that I've put my points in the letter, there's nothing I wish to amplify. I'm not going to give you more detail on the amount of noise one gets and this sort of thing. A possibility one might have is that I endorse the idea of keeping the bottles inside, because for a long time, Plonkers and the Lowther were taking their large, I think they're called skips, where they put empty bottles in behind the bar, lift them off the top of the dustbins and dropping them in with a crash in the wee small hours. And I think that no longer happens. So
Not to be encouraged.
no, okay.
Thank you then. Okay, so Mr. Cawshaw has put his case, and we would like to invite Mr. Moore if he's got any questions for Mr. Cawshaw.
No.
Okay. And members of this committee. And none from me either. So, Mr. Cawshaw, the time is now come for you to sum up your case. And if it involves repeating some of the points in your letter, please do so, because it's important that we actually hear them rather than have them up, if you like, in front of us in writing.
Right, okay, yes, because obviously somebody on the recording wouldn't necessarily have access to the letter. Yeah, I get the point, yes. So, yes, I accept the fact that it's largely for the use of the 11 apartments and others owned by the applicant. I suggest it might be suitable for have a hotel type license, if that is possible. I would have reservations about offering to the general public, but Mr. Moore assures me that's not going to be the case. And so there won't be an open door with light saying come in. And prevention of crime and disorder, well, once they're in the street, there's not a lot Mr. Moore can do about it. And so, it's the cumulative effect, which is covered by the cumulative impact area, which causes the trouble. And unfortunately, safety occurs as well, because there have been drownings in the river due to people being drunk. And there are irregular flowers on the railings outside my house, which are testament to that. I suspect that they are reinforced by perhaps the council to make the point, but it's definitely unfortunate that happens. So yes, I think that other than that, that's fine. I'm happy with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cawshaw, Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Crawshaw, for that summing up. Okay, and now it's over to Mr. Moore as applicant to make his summation of any points he wishes to add to what has been said, and certainly to outline what he's been thinking about earlier.
Well, all I'd like to finish off with is I'd like to say that I've gone along and agreed with the licensing authority and what recommendations they said. I also did with the Environmental Protection Unit. I've also took into consideration the bin store for the bottles to stop what Mr. said it happens, and I know this does happen, and that's why the bin store was built internally and not externally. So the bins will only actually be taken out the night before bins get collected. And predominantly for I know it's in the CIZ zone, but majority of the people leaving the premises will be guests what are actually in the premises and not flowing out into the street. Like when various other pubs or clubs close, majority of these guests will be going up to the apartments. And I don't think I've got anything else to say. I think the hearing's been fair, and let's hope that it comes to the conclusion what I'd like. Whether it does or not, we don't know yet.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moore. Any questions for clarifications from members of the committee? Councillor Rose.
Yeah, and firstly, thank you for being so amenable to all of the points that have been raised and the questions that have been asked, and for suggestions for how to improve it. And thank you for your candour and response to today as well. Being open, I know we're not in deliberations, but my concern within the cumulative impact area is still that even if the predominant mood of the people there is going to be to go back upstairs and to keep all the sound contained, etc., there is still the two risks, I guess. The risk of, number one, sound as people enter and exit. I've got a question off the back of it.
Okay, well, if you,
I'm just trying to lay out.
well, I think if I can ask you, please don't trespass on the grounds that the committee will be discussing. If you want to ask questions, that would be really appreciated.
Absolutely, I'm asking the question. As people enter and leave, potentially that's where there may be sound and therefore public nuisance related to it, and not just people who are in there using it, which obviously may dampen the impact on the wider area because they're not going out, but people coming in from the area from Blossom Street, from Warngate, elsewhere, brings people in that might have stayed drinking or anything else in areas that were outside. What would your feeling be around a condition that it could only be used by the guests of that building itself? How strongly would that impact your ability to make it a viable license?
I wouldn't agree to that. No, definitely not. I don't think it would be sustainable solely on that, the premises, because even though the capacity is 72, it doesn't mean that every 72 people will come from them flats down there. You might get Mr. and Mrs. with two kids what are going to Viking Centre, Clifford's Tower, they're not interested in going down there. So out of all the apartments, and again, predominantly, they're only 90%, and I can prove this if you need to have it to prove. Sunday to Thursday, there's nobody in that block at all. So it's only Friday, Saturday, and the odd Sunday if it's a bank holiday Monday. So even though it's a 7-night operation, probably 4 nights of it is going to be nobody in. So I couldn't rely on just solely that, the cap of how many out of the 72 will actually use that bar.
I thought that might be the answer, but I thought I'd just check that to understand. And the smaller version of the same question, which is you had off premises meaning upstairs, would you be averse to a condition that dictates that off premises means upstairs as opposed to people can just take alcohol out into the street after they leave?
I wouldn't want to agree to a condition of that, but if I have to, then I have to.
Okay. Councillor Coburn.
Thanks, Chair. And Leslie, correct me if I'm wrong. It's just very unusual in these applications to see no restriction on when you can empty your bottle bins. Are we confident that this enclosed store will keep the sound in, that the door will always be closed? Because obviously that noise travels throughout the whole of the city centre. So unless I've missed it, I'm not seeing any restriction on when the bottle bins can be emptied.
No, there isn't a restriction. As said previously, Michael Golightly, the Environmental Protection Officer, has met with Mr. Moore. I don't know if he actually went into the premises. So from that, I'm assuming Michael is satisfied that the bin store within the premises will not cause a noise issue.
So I guess then the condition then, because we don't want to impose conditions unnecessarily, so the condition then will be that that door would need to be kept closed at all times, because otherwise the noise will just travel, won't it?
It will, yes. And I mean, Mr. Moore did mention with regards to when you would be putting your bins out of your store to get collected. I don't know what your arrangements
normally,
are
I
with
think
regard
our
to
bin
that.
collection day for the guests, for the rubbish what comes out of the flats, is a Tuesday, but we normally put them out on Monday evening. I don't know if you know the back of the area where, so in that back of the area behind Bonkers, it's just full of wheelie bins in a big square like that of everybody's. What's on a bonus on my side is that I can have my bin store internally. Plonkers, the Lowther, the Dungeons and Cuda nightclub don't have that facility because they're all externally. So we normally just take them out the night before because they can come from any time from 7:30 to whatever time they've been get there. And after the time when they come, they can't get in because of the taxis what are parked at the
Sorry,
side.
no, just to the point that I'm getting to is that when the bottle bins are full behind your bar at midnight and your staff tip them into the bigger bin in the bin store, that's what makes the noise. So making sure that that doesn't disturb people who are living in the flats across the river, essentially. So there's two ways of doing that. If Michael's happy that the store as is soundproof enough, then I'm not going to question that, but it's only soundproof so long as that door's shut when the bin's being tipped.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
No further questions from me. Quite happy with what I've heard. So at that point, I'm going to close the meeting to the public. We will continue to deliberate and we'll notify you of the decision in writing within five days. I think it should be sooner than that. We'll do our best. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moore, for your time. Thank you, Mr. Corshall, for your contribution too.